before going into the problem and after having the solution in the form of flowchart, pseudocode, and algorithm, the first thing you have to decide the input and then the output and then the processing, right? So that has been already presented in the flowchart. Now how you can convert those things into program? So input is received, so you have to write some code or some statement, okay, for collecting the inputs, and then some line of code for writing the processing of this particular problem, and some line of statement for displaying the output in the console or in the to the user. It looks like this, the block diagram for IPO. IPO means input processing output. The block diagram of IPO is like this. You have the processing unit or the model, okay. There you insert your inputs, whatever the inputs you need to process your or to solve your problem, and the process will generate an output of your problem, that is the solution. So this IPO, input processing output, can be represented by using a chart, okay, and that is called IPO chart, where each of these input processing and output can be represented by using a column, okay. Column means the vertical representations of an attribute, where an IPO chart is simple and effective tool to use while designing a program. So this IPO chart will give you a nice understanding during the program design, okay. The input column shows the description of the input data. So what are the input data you have to collect, and what is the meaning of those input data? All these things will be explained in the input column. The processing column shows the description of the process. That means what processes will be used, and what are the explanations of that processes that will be next. That will be presented in this processing column. And the output column, the last column, that is the part where you have to explain or to describe the output which will be produced by the processing unit of your code. So it looks like this. So you have an input column, you have an processing column, and you have an output column. For the input column, you have to describe all the inputs, whatever you need for solving a particular problem. And processing column will be used to explain the processing part of that particular problem, and the output column will be used to explain the output this processing column or processing unit will generate. That will be represented or will be explained in this column. So for example, for calculating the pay of an employee or anybody, so you need two inputs, like the rate of the payment and how many hours that person worked. So now if you multiply these two units inputs, so that is the processing part, and the result of that multiplication will be the output. So that all this explanation will be written in here, and that's called IPO chart. That the way you can represent your input, processing, and output. Now the input, whatever you need, like here, this number of hours, the hourly pay rate, these are called the data. Okay, data to the program.